My name is Raisa. I am a 2018 fellow and I teach in Madina Mission High School in Old City, Hyderabad. Fellowship experience. It's been interesting. It's had like I've ended up doing things I swore I'd never do. Things I was always like, nahi, ye to life mein nahi karna hai. So it's like I've had to do all of that. Like I've had to be okay with being uncomfortable. So I actually knew I was coming to this classroom right at the like before institute, because like the person who interviewed me was the program manager of the school, and the 16er was Aishwarya. So I remember at my interview he was like, I already know the school I'm putting you in. And I was like, okay, does this mean I'm accepted? But so like then he made sure I visited the school and I knew the children. So I actually knew them a bit beforehand, before I came. But it was, and so like we were like sort of accustomed to each other, the kids and I. But like what has been great about starting out with this classroom is just that they knew what they wanted, right? Like they knew what they expected from me as a teacher. They knew the role they wanted to play as students. Yeah. So when I joined, Huda had already been to the first KER, the 2018 KER, the first one. So she had already been there, and like it was already, when I stepped in, the community was already sort of like undergoing this lens shift, because when Aishwarya had to convince everyone to let Huda go to Mumbai. Like I remember she was telling me it was a month-long process where she had to convince her parents and the school management and everyone to just like let them understand what an opportunity it was for her, and to let her go to Mumbai. And then when I came in after that, so the second time round was really easy. Like we just had to fill out a form and she got selected and everyone was super excited for her to go. But then what that started doing was it started getting a lot of other students interested as well. The coolest thing about Huda basically will be like if she learns something new, she wants to share it, right? And like that's very unusual in this community, because like in this community the mindset is that if I know something I should keep it to myself. Other people shouldn't benefit from things I know, right? And like so she's like kind of an odd man out in that sort of atmosphere, but like because she comes in with that mindset, right? Like because she comes in saying कि okay, if I learn something everyone should learn from it. She was just constantly gathering her classmates and like telling them, okay, this is what I learned at KER, or this is what I learned because I read something, or this is what I thought about, this is a discussion that I had. And slowly like you saw that, slowly I saw that being picked up by the other kids in the class. So like this year for example, every kid in the class is running a project of their own, right? And all of this happened because like this started with Huda. They are also running 2 projects as a class together. So basically, like because Huda was already in class, and because there was already like this mindset that she has that whatever you know, share. I think like that the other kids picked up really well. Now they're teaching the whole school. When the students come up with something that they want to do on their own, I make sure that I'm not someone who tells them anything negative about it. Like I'm not someone who says this is not possible, or this is not right, or like nothing of that sort, right? If they come to those conclusions on their own, like through their work, that's okay. If they decide that this is something that they don't want to do over the course of time, that's okay. But for me, I think that just my classroom culture also since like the last year, and at this point as well, has just been to struggle and to like learn from failure, right? And so just like sort of pumping that into their brains every day, I think translates into all of the projects that they do. And just like even with every project that they're working with, the only lens that I provide them is one that you learn from reflection all the time, right? So like reflection is something again that I push any kid doing projects in my class to engage in, because I feel like that's just the best way for them to learn from anything that they're doing. I think like something that I've seen change about her compared to like her previous work and now is just like Huda, for example, when I'm starting a project or when another kid is starting a project, we're always thinking that I'm starting this and I'm going to be successful, right? Huda goes in knowing that it's a 50-50 bet. and she goes in knowing that if I fail, this is what I'm going to learn from it, right? Like that's really cool to see about her, because she has like a million ideas, right? Like she wants to do so many things, and like she does all of it with so much energy and so much dedication. Like I remember one of the projects that she was trying to build last year. So she'd been teaching for a while, and she had seen that a couple of the other kids in the 9th grade class as well were interested in like teaching with her, and she wanted to expand her reach, right? She wanted to be able to teach more students, more subjects, more grades, but she couldn't do it all alone. So she and the 9th graders made like a really elaborate plan. They said they decided, okay, this grade, this subject, this is what I'm teaching. They put up posters all across the community. Right, and they had and that also happened because some of the parents in the community kept asking, okay, my kid is not in this school, but how can I like have him study with Teach for India? So like this is like they saw a need for it, and then they went with it, but it didn't work out for a lot of reasons. But like that's what was cool about it, like if it was me, or I think if it was any other kid trying to figure that out, like I think once a project fails, like you'd probably be a little disheartened. But like with Huda, like I was saying, like she always goes in knowing that if I fail, what am I still learning from this, right? Like that's something really cool that I've seen her develop over the year. It's been pretty interesting to see. Like honestly, I don't think Huda approaches anything thinking that, okay, I'm a leader. I don't think that is her approach at all. I feel like Huda's approach, and I think also because I think there's also the reason it becomes popular. So I think people also don't look at her as, okay, this is someone who we can follow. In a community like Januma, like Huda, outside of here, she probably has ideas that are very, that you might not call very radical, like that they might seem ordinary. But they are radical because they are in a community like this, right? They're radical in this context. Do I see Huda as someone who's like a force of positive changes in this community? Yeah, for sure. Because I think just by being who she is and doing what she does, very unabashedly, like very unapologetically, she's managed to actually change some very, very rigid minds in this community about what is possible and who should do what. So definitely, I think without trying to be one, she's just sort of like ended up in this place where she is a leader in the sense that she's the first to do a lot of things. As a female child in Januma. Like if you talk to Huda about her family, okay, I'm not sure, did she speak about her family? She didn't. Yeah, like they're extremely supportive, but sometimes what happens is Huda might be a little too radical for them, right? So she's also someone who's like constantly challenging the norm. So if you tell her, like there's a saying in this community, acha, girls shouldn't laugh very loudly, okay, right? And like Huda is like a funny kid, like she's always laughing. So every time like someone tells her that at home, like she'll like have a solid argument with them, right? Like she's like, what is this? How can this make sense? How is this logical? And for a lot of people, then that becomes really like shocking, because like here's someone who's challenging, like rituals and traditions that you have for years. So that is definitely an aspect of her personality I'm sure people don't enjoy. But at the same time, like with other parents, for example, definitely like I've had so many parents of girls just tell me, okay, how do I make sure that my daughter has the same opportunities as Huda? Like what is it that I need to do? How can we send my kid to Mumbai? And these are people who wouldn't send their kids to Banjara Hills with me. So like, I mean, them thinking about sending kids outside, letting them participate in so many things, just allowing girls to have exposure to a variety of things, right? Like parents wouldn't send their kids to the school picnic, but now like because Huda went to so many places, like they're like, okay, you fill out the form to go to KER, you go and participate in competitions. Why aren't you participating in competitions? Why isn't your face on that poster? So that has started to happen in the community, and I feel like also people are somewhere there's a sort of dissonance also that is going on with respect to the two, because in one way parents are super protective about their girls, right? Like they want them in front of their eyes at all times, like once you go to school and then you come back and then you just should not leave my sight, right? Like forget going to another city or things like that. But now the ambition has sort of stepped in. So like this is a period of slight confusion for the parents, I would say, because that in one place they definitely want the girls to access all of these opportunities that are available, but at the same time they want to chaperone them everywhere. So that becomes a little hard. That's just a sort of dissonance that I feel like the parents are trying to figure out how to go about. I think Huda plays actually quite a good role in that. Like I've seen her, for example, when we were filling out the KER forms, and we were talking about, okay, it's possible that someone else from our classroom might end up going, but there are so many parents who are so apprehensive, and it's sad because like these girls are just so brilliant, right? Like they deserve to go wherever it is that they can, and so like a lot of the girls were not filling out forms because they were like, oh, there's no way like I'm going to be allowed to go, and so there were a lot of them just like dropping out. So what we had Huda do, actually, we had Huda talk to the parents of these girls, right? And she was telling them about how they're looked after in Mumbai and all the facilities that they have and how it's safe and how like she could talk to her parents whenever she wanted to and how she learned so much. And so yeah, I think like just having Huda as someone who's already been there, done that, is sort of a reassurance for a lot of people in the community when they're like, okay, like one of our own has gone out and done so many things, so I guess my daughter can too. That's what's happened with them. But I am also again not sure about what happens when these parents come to the actual crossroads, right? Like right now these kids are not 18, although very often that is not the age requirement to get married in Januma. Like if you're 15, you're fine. But like these kids are still young, so we're not at that juncture yet. And of course that's a worry that I have, because peer pressure is a thing, right, for parents as well. Like they're like, oh my god, what will my relatives say? My daughter's going to college. Because like that was a big thing for Huda's parents as well. Like a big thing that was holding them back from sending her to Mumbai the first time was just like, what will our relatives say? So I know like that is a battle that parents are fighting every day. But I feel like more parents now are consciously choosing to fight that battle, right? Where they're just sort of like, okay, my daughter will not be limited because of other people's perspective. Like I think that at least has started in a few parents, and I think like changes like this are slow. It's not possible to bring about with like one kid. So I think like it probably will take a longer time, but I can see it set in motion already. Chronicles, I remember when we started it last year, and it was with the 8th and 9th graders last year. And when she started, like there was always a small group. There were only like 3-4 kids who wanted to talk, and there were not even a lot who would like come and sit and even listen, right? But slowly I've seen that Chronicles essentially has just become like a space. Now it's not just the 8th and 9th graders, it's not just the TFI classrooms. We have kids from across the school coming in, sitting, sharing things that they want to talk about, listening to each other. I've so many times at Chronicles, I see kids who barely talk to me in class, but they're like, standing up there reading a poetry that they've written. It's really cool to watch. So many of the younger kids have actually, like these were classrooms that we've had in school, the Non-Teach for India classrooms, where the teachers kept telling us, these kids aren't able to write like a sentence on their own. What are we going to do with them? But now we actually have them coming up presenting original pieces of theirs. So like it's been a space that has meant different things for different kids, I think. But I think overall it's in a way this school in a lot of ways did not have a space for student voice, and I feel like that's precisely what Huda has created for the students, just like a space to talk, because that doesn't even happen in classrooms. So I think that's been pretty important. It's quite interesting how radically like feminist our girls are, and I'm not sure like how much of that comes from the fellows, but how much of that also is very innate, because this community that we're in, Januma, like you'll have, like you walk on the road, you will, like women have no identity here, right? So for example, like a lot of girls were talking about eve teasing at the Chronicles, and that's such a pain point for these kids because like these girls will be walking on the road minding their own business doing nothing, and there's someone eve teasing them, but the consequences of that are not faced by the boys. The consequences of that are faced by the girls, like their movement will be restricted or they'll be pulled out of school. The boys don't really face a lot of consequences in Janama. And so I think then that KER also become a space for these girls to just sort of come together and talk about this. Like nowhere else in their lives are these conversations happening, right? Nowhere else these conversations about their space or their autonomy or just their basic freedom. These conversations, they don't have a chance to have these conversations anywhere else. So I think like once KER as a space was created, I think the girls just sort of took it and made it their own safe haven, right? Like all of these radical ideas that you hear coming out, I feel like are just a result of all the suppression also that happens in this community when on account of being a woman. So what's really cool to see about Huda's effect on the girls is just how much they've learned to become comfortable with themselves. And how, like, I feel like before, if the girls had to do like any act that would be called too radical or like, too revolutionary, too rebellious, they probably would not do it, right? But now, like, they're in a place where they're sort of pushing the boundaries of say what's acceptable and what not. For example, Huda's best friend Sumukha rides him to school on a scooter every day. Okay, and that is something that does not happen in Jahanuma. Like girls don't ride scooters, but like this is just one of the this is just a small influence of that, right? There's girls in that classroom, like these girls wear a face piece when they leave school, right? So they're in a full burqa, their faces are covered. Huda refuses to wear one, so she doesn't wear a burqa yet. And because Huda refuses to wear one, Kafia refuses to wear one. Kafia is the other girl that you interviewed. And because these two refused to wear burqas, the other girls started at least dropping like their face pieces, So like now they're stepping out with their faces seen. And so like these are just like, and it started with Huda just sort of, being comfortable with who she is in her own skin, refusing to comply. And like I think it's like a domino effect, right? Like when one starts, others start. So a lot of what I hear from the boys about the gender dynamic in Jahanuma, because I mean I'm an outsider here as well technically, so even though like I understand some of the background, I don't understand all of it. I definitely don't understand what it's like in other schools, and so what it's like for most of the kids in this community. But from what I hear from the boys, like there's a lot of gender segregation in Jahanuma, okay? So growing up as a teenager, the only interaction you will probably have with someone of the opposite sex is if you have siblings, right? Because in most schools, like the boys and girls have different blocks, their classrooms are separate, they're not even in the same building, in so many schools in this community. So just like I feel like so many kids also don't even know कि अच्छा what does a boy behave like or what does a girl behave like what is this other entirely different gender, right? But with Huda being in the classroom with the boys, again just sort of like unapologetically being herself, right? Like she has moods sometimes where she's super serious, or then like she has moods other times where she's like jumping around the class laughing, joking with everybody. Just for the kids to see that, understand that okay, someone's absolutely okay with being 100% themselves in the class. I've also seen the boys then understand, like I've seen them since the boys and girls have then started interacting a bit more in the classroom. I've seen the lens shift from okay, this is a section of the population that we're not supposed to interact with. The only interaction that we have with them is if we call them names on the street, to going ahead and seeing them as they are friends, people who can help them, that they can help, that they can learn from, that they can actually have relationships with, strong friendships with. So I think that has been very cool to see, and I think that only happened because of a domino effect. Like when one kid starts expressing her individuality in the class, I think a lot of kids started picking that up, and like I feel like then for the boys especially, it became possible for them to see um, girls as assertive people, girls who have a voice and use it. Girls who are not just like sitting in the back of the class, silent, in the shadows, not participating. Girls who are shadows on the street. Just like I think for the boys, it was very important for them at this age to see the opposite gender as actual whole people, right?